Hi, crafty friends. Today I will be using the Ornamental Bouquet by Altenew, which is a hot foil plate and stencil set, and then you can get the die as an add-on. I will be hot foiling and creating a loose watercolor type of card, and then one will have a stenciled background. So I hot foil these, one with some pink hot foil and the other with golds. And I am just going to use those stencils and ink up these beautiful bouquets of flowers. Starting with the pink foiled one, I line up my stencil on the stamp wheel, and then I'm grabbing the colors of pale mauve. That is what I will be using first. Then amethyst for my second layer, grape agate, and plum. And I will be using them in the order that they are to the right of my stamp wheel, going in and trying to ensure that I get all of the detail coverage that is necessary to create these beautiful card fronts. These inks are a part of one of the latest fresh dye ink releases. These inks released in December, if I'm not mistaken, and they are a part of the Sugarplums collection. So for the actual flower buds and blooms, I will be using these colors. But for the leaves, I will be using blue tones, and these blue tones are part of the Glacier Caves release that also released in December of 2023. The first stencil that you use to lay down your base colors for the flower buds and blooms is not placed as the ornamental bouquet is foiled, if that makes sense. So you do have to like move it from side to side to get coverage for each of the blooms and where it is necessary. That is also the case for at least the second stencil. So just be sure that when you are inking these up that you are making sure that you're not being too messy. You don't have too much ink left on your stencil to the point that it can bleed through the open spaces and create a bit of a mess on your workspace. So it is good to go in and wipe after you've added ink. I did not do that, and I think I did end up getting ink where I did not want it. I do end up covering it up when I stencil the background of this card panel. So you can see a slightly sped up version of me inking this up, and I do use all four of these colors in some way on these flowers. The plum I try to use mainly to add depth, so you may see me go back with a stencil to add more detailing and depth using that plum. I use that color the most sparingly because once it's there, I know I can't do anything about it. Once everything is complete, this is how my flower or ornamental bouquet ends up looking, and I'm very satisfied with it. So moving on to the stems and foliage, I am going to use those Glacier Caves colors, and I will not be using all four. I start by using the Arctic color, and that is just my lightest color. I think I will only end up using three colors if I'm not mistaken. And with the leaves, you just have to rotate the stencil to fill in where everything is needed. Moving on from Arctic, I use the Caribbean Sky color. It is a bit brighter, and I do like how that looks, but I end up going in with the Persian blue at the base of all of the cutouts just to add a little bit more depth, since there were only stencils for mainly two colors. I wanted to use as many as I could. All right, so there is the stenciled flower as is, but I am going to do a little bit more. I do grab my sand eraser to clean up any of the excess foil that I see. I did that at the beginning as well, kind of sped by that earlier, but I do use my sand eraser to remove excess foiling. And here I am just taking this stencil and I am going over it with some white pigment ink just to lay a base layer down. And then I am going to grab a few of those sugar plum colors and those brushes, and I'm going to stencil and kind of offset this stencil here and there to create a pattern background, trying not to cover any of the flower that I've already stenciled. I want it to look like this bouquet is popped up. I do not have the dies, so if I want to pop it up, I would actually have to fussy cut it. So that's why I'm doing it this way. I failed to mention that this is the sweater pattern building stencil. So there are two stencils in this set and you are able to build a beautiful sweater, but I am using it to add some texture to the background of this card. I completed the sweater background and this is how things are looking. So I choose to swipe my Sapphire Fresh Dye ink on some packaging. I take my water brush and I add some splatter using the Fresh Dye ink across the card front. And I wanted to use this color because it's the only color of those two sets that I did not use when stenciling this card front. So there we have that. Quickly moving on to the next card, I squeeze my water brush or water pen and I add water to that glob of ink. I didn't want it to go to waste and I just smushed that on to that card panel with the gold foiled ornamental bouquet, and I just add some extra water, add a little more ink. I think that ink might have been the Arctic color, so the lighter one, just to add a little bit of variation. And I smushed it again, and there we have this beautiful watercolored looking card. I am going to add even more color, and this time I added the Caribbean sky, if I'm not mistaken. Again, trying to add all those colors onto this card panel. This was not hot foiled on a watercolor panel, so I am trying to be careful that I don't saturate the card too much. So I am going to go in with my heat tool and make sure that everything dries nicely. From there, I grab my layering stencils and we are going to add just a bit of color, only using those Glacier Caves colors. Starting with the stencil for the second layer of color, I go in with Prussian blue. That is the second to the darkest blue in this set. So I'm going in with that Prussian blue and I'm adding those details. Once I have done that, I will then go in with the sapphire blue and add in those darker details all over this flower. I just love how the watercolor background looks. Like, this was just absolutely gorgeous to me, so I just kept going with it once I saw what I'd done, and I look forward to trying this technique with more hot foil plates. I absolutely love the smushing and just how beautiful it looks. It looks very intentional, although it definitely was not. Again, I'm going in with that sapphire blue for the second darkest layer. Moving on to the leaves, I am going to use Caribbean Sky and Prussian Blue again because the Arctic color is already kind of there and it's like a watered down blue mix already in place. So that is what I'm going to use. I did matte these on cardstock that I swiped with the darkest color of inks, so plum and sapphire, and I added on a foiled sentiment. This is a sentiment strip from Altenew that I use with gold foil. But yeah, guys, these are my completed cards. I hope you enjoyed this quick little tutorial and it inspires you today. Have a great day.